All right, let's dive into one of the most stark and, let's be honest, kind of scary verses in the whole Bible. It's a line that, for centuries, has brought up these intense images of final judgment and being locked out for good. But what if there's a lot more to it than that? What if we've been missing the point?
For without our dogs, and sorcerers, and whoremongers, and murderers, and idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. Wow, I mean, that sounds so final, doesn't it? It feels like a bouncer at the gates of heaven with a list, and if your name is on it, you are never, ever getting in.
And that leads directly to the big, scary question that just hangs over this whole verse. Is this it? Is this the permanent, unchangeable list of people who are condemned to hell? Well, I think the answer is going to surprise you. To really get to the heart of what's going on in Revelation 22:15, we have to do more than just read the English translation. We've got to peel back the layers, kind of like an onion, and dive into the super symbolic language of the original text. This isn't about a physical place as much as it is about a spiritual reality. Okay, so here's the first huge shift in perspective. The thinking here is that this isn't a checklist of sins that gets you kicked out of the club. Nope. Instead, it's describing entire mindsets, whole ways of being, that are just fundamentally at odds with the very nature of God. So, let's become detectives for a few minutes. We're going to break down each of these symbolic labels to see what they really meant to the people who first heard them. And trust me, this is where it gets really fascinating. First up, dogs. Now, in this ancient world, this has absolutely nothing to do with our furry best friends. It was a term for scavengers, and it became this powerful symbol for people who were seen as spiritually unclean, or those who chose to live outside of a relationship with God. Next, sorcerers. This isn't really about casting spells with a wand, it's about a deep reliance on manipulation, on deception, basically trying to get power through shady means and falsehoods, instead of just trusting in divine truth. The term whoremongers also has a much wider meaning than you'd think. Yeah, it can be about sexual immorality, but it's also used as a symbol for any kind of spiritual unfaithfulness, like making an idol out of physical pleasure or self-gratification instead of your relationship with God. And murderers. This one points to more than just the physical act. It gets to the very spirit behind it: hatred, violence, and a mindset that's all about destroying life. It's the absolute polar opposite of God, who is seen as the giver of life. And finally, we have idolaters. This is all about what or who we put on the throne of our lives. It's the worship of literally anything, whether it's ideas, money, success, or even ourselves, in the one spot that's meant only for God. So, here's the crucial point. When you line them all up like this, you start to see a theme, right? Every single one of these categories represents a fundamental rejection of a key part of God's nature: holiness, truth, faithfulness, life, and worship. But wait, the verse isn't done. It ends with this one last, huge, all-encompassing phrase that basically ties everything we just talked about together and gets right to the absolute core of the problem. And it's this right here: and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. See, this isn't just one more thing on the list. No way. This is the summary. This is the very definition of everything that came before it. It's like the root system that all those other symbolic branches grow out of. And this slide really frames the ultimate showdown. The Bible presents these two totally opposite natures: God, who literally is truth, and Satan, who is called the father of lies. So to love and make a lie isn't just a small mistake. It's to align yourself with a nature that is fundamentally completely opposed to God. And that realization brings us to the biggest aha moment in this whole thing. It's the idea that completely reframes the entire verse. It turns out this might not be about a place called hell at all. It's about something totally different. This, right here, perfectly illustrates that key shift in understanding. The common interpretation is that without means you're thrown into a physical place of punishment. But this alternative interpretation says without actually describes a spiritual state, being excluded from union with Christ. So it's not about where you are, but who you can't be with. And why is that? It's because the city in Revelation isn't a literal place with walls and gates you can get locked out of. It's a powerful metaphor for the bride of Christ, which is just another way of saying a state of perfect, intimate union with God. And think about it. Just like oil and water can't mix, a mindset that is built on lies simply cannot exist in union with the one who is truth. So if falsehood is what keeps someone without, then how is that separation fixed? How do you get access to this union? Let's look at how all the pieces come together to answer that.
The logic flows really smoothly. Step 1, you have the problem. Falsehood, just by what it is, separates us from truth. Step 2, you have the resolution. The cross is presented as the moment in history where truth won a decisive victory over deception. And that leads to step 3, the result. Christ becomes the door, the way back into that state of union.
So let's just do a quick recap of the key takeaways here. This super intimidating verse isn't a literal list of who's damned. It's a symbolic description of mindsets that are all rooted in falsehood. Being without isn't about hell, it's about being outside of union with God, who is truth. And finally, access to that union is made possible through Christ. And all of that leaves us with one last, really challenging question. It takes this ancient text and makes it incredibly personal for you and me. If that city represents a perfect union with truth, what are the lies that keep us outside? What are the self-deceptions, the idols, the falsehoods that we still love and live out that keep us in a state of being without? That's something to really think about.